Let's delve into a parallel universe for a few minutes and imagine that Donald Trump succeeds in making Canada the 51st state by hook or by crook. Will the ideological gravity of America be strong enough to suck Canadian society into the American dream? Will it enhance or threaten American security? Will it mark the return of manifest destiny and pave the way for further annexation of Mexico? The mere idea of the admission of the state of Canada holds immense ideological, political, and economic implications, obviously not considered by President Trump. Let's dissect them. Among other political peculiarities unfolding in the unpredictable Trumpian order, the idea of a forced integration of Canada as the 51st state of the U.S. is the hardest to digest. Bizarre as it may sound, this is not the first time America thought of annexing Canada. The war hawks of the 19th century, led by John C. Calhoun and Henry Clay, made repeated attempts to force President Jefferson to attack Canada. However, conditions were completely different back then. Canada was not a sovereign nation, and the demands for annexing Canada were made to force Britain to accept American neutrality and end the practice of impressment of American sailors. Imagine Canada enters the Union with its 9.985 square kilometers of territory and a population of 40.1 million. Its admission would gravely alter the composition of Congress and Senate and may stir up a constitutional crisis. Canada's representation in Congress may be decided without much haggling, but the Senate would be a major battleground. Would there be only 2 seats for Canada just like the rest of the states, or would there be 2 seats for each of the 10 provinces of Canada, totaling 20 seats for the newly admitted state? It would greatly disturb the balance of power in the upper house and give rise to a political storm. Bleeding Kansas was the result of the fears of losing just 2 seats. Imagine what 20 seats would do. The admission of Canada would also spell the end of the 2-party system held in place since the presidency of Thomas Jefferson. The addition of the Canadian Liberal Party and Conservative Party would transform the domestic political landscape of the country. Their pro-people policies on labor unions, healthcare system, higher education, and environmental conservation would attract like-minded individuals and groups from the Democratic Party. However, Republicans would be the biggest losers in this scenario. There would be a high probability of the swing states swinging in favor of the new parties. Moreover, Green parties in both countries may also form a united front. The inclusion of Canada as a state would open the cultural Pandora box that would further exacerbate social polarization, which is hollowing the country from within. Its tolerance for immigration, multiculturalism, and gender diversity would further pit Americans against one another. Politics would get more toxic, and the ideological divide will deepen, weakening the social foundation of the country. Hot topics such as abortion, DEI, gun ownership, immigration, and the rights of indigenous people would build an unbridgeable gap between different sections of American society. Difficulties on the foreign policy front would also increase for America. Canada has spent decades cultivating a reputation as a peace-loving nation that believes in international law and multilateralism. Resistance against the tendency of Uncle Sam for unilateral actions would be strongest from the newly admitted state. Couple the moral standing with its representation in the Senate, the new state would hamstring the country's ability to aggressively pursue national interests in the face of hostile nemesis. Incorporation of the new state would also renew American imperialistic designs. The annexation of Canada would lead to a return of the idea of manifest destiny, which signified that America had a God-given right to spread all over the Americas and spread its superior civilization. Encouraged by the triumph in Canada, it would direct its attention to Mexico. There would be another Mexican War and another Guadalupe Hidalgo. The imperialistic ambitions may not be confined to the Western Hemisphere. The occupation of Gaza and Greenland would also be on the cards. Just like the Spanish War of 1898 and the succeeding violence in the Philippines, there would be many more Philippines. When it comes to security considerations and strategic leverage, this is the only area where the U.S. could benefit from the annexation of Canada. The huge swathes of land and access to the Arctic Ocean would give America a strategic edge over Russia and China. Attempting to gain control of its vast resources and the new trade routes it would offer, the Arctic would accelerate geopolitical competition among the global powers. Just like the gold rush in California, the energy resources in the Arctic would attract energy giants from America, resulting in further environmental degradation. Across the Atlantic and Pacific, the reputation of America as a reliable security partner would suffer a great deal. NATO would suffer an existential crisis since the whole point of the military alliance was to ensure collective security. Canada being coerced by America would negate its whole purpose. Japan would feel threatened by this new belligerence of its security partner and would rethink its defense pact with the imperial power. Considering the dissatisfaction of the people of Okinawa with American military bases in the city, the pressure to decouple Tokyo from Washington would further increase. The geostrategic vacuum created by these developments would provide opportunities for China and Russia to further their interests. Some may think that the above scenario is highly exaggerated, and the system of checks and balances placed on each branch of government makes it impossible for such a drastic step. However, this line of reasoning undermines the influence of individuals on the system. As President Trump is bent on weakening democratic institutions and imposing non-democratic powers, the American political system is increasingly acquiring authoritative tendencies. And if there is one definite feature that characterizes authoritarian regimes, it is military adventurism.